Welcome, traveller. If you're looking for a place to unwind, to let your mind drift, and to fall asleep to the sound of old stories, you're in the right place. Here we explore the legends of Warcraft, slowly, softly, one tale at a time. Tonight we begin at the very beginning, before the wars, before the kingdoms fell, before the first step through the dark portal. So get comfortable, close your eyes, and if this helps you rest, or just brings you peace, consider subscribing for more quiet journeys through Azeroth's history. Now, let the story begin. Let me tell you a tale, not of kings or gods, but of a gate carved into the fabric of two worlds, and through it came fire and war and shadow. But before that, there was peace. In the southern reaches of Azeroth, past the lush forests of Elwyn and the golden fields of Westfall, lay the kingdom of Stormwind. It was a proud land, orderly and strong, and in those days, unaware of the storm that would soon descend upon it. Stormwind was not the largest of the human realms, nor the oldest, but it was perhaps the most at peace. Knights trained in the courtyards of Northshire Abbey. Farmers worked their fields without fear of war or wild beasts. The capital city was alive with markets and laughter, watched over by King Lane Rin, a young ruler, wise beyond his years and beloved by his people. By his side stood Anduin Lothar, last of the ancient Arathi bloodline, a warrior of discipline and honor. Lothar was the steel spine of the kingdom. And then there was Medivh, the guardian of Tirisfal. Though few outside the highest circles knew his name, his power was immense. He had been chosen to protect Azeroth from the dark forces beyond its stars, but some shadows lie too deep to guard against. While the kingdom looked outward and saw only sunlight, a darkness was festering beneath its surface. Far beyond the oceans of Azeroth, beyond the reach of any map drawn by man, lay a dying world called Draenor. Its skies burned with red light, its rivers turned to ash, and its people, the orcs, had once lived in harmony with nature. They were shamans, bound to the spirits of the land, the wind, and the flame. But that harmony had been broken. A whisper, ancient and cruel, had crept into their dreams and rituals. It promised strength, purpose, power. That whisper belonged to the Burning Legion. A vast and malevolent force, the Legion moved from world to world, consuming all in its path. At its head was Sargeras, a fallen titan who sought to unmake creation. He needed armies, pawns. He found them in the Orcs of Draenor. Led by the warlock Gul'dan, the Orcish clans gathered in secret. There, beneath a cursed sky, they drank the blood of a demon lord. Their eyes burned green, their bodies swelled with fury, and the spirits of the land turned away. The orcs had become something else. Not raiders, not warriors. They had become invaders. A plan was born. A portal would be built. A rift between Draenor and a new world ripe for conquest. A door not made of wood or iron, but of magic and malice. The one chosen to open it was Medivh. Though he had been destined to defend Azeroth, Medivh had been corrupted from birth. The spirit of Sargeras had taken root in him while still in his mother's womb. For years it slept. Now it awakened. Medivh reached across the void. Gul'dan reached back, and together they tore a hole between worlds. In a swamp known as the Black Morass, beneath a sky that would never know peace again, the dark portal was born. But that is merely the beginning. And Stormwind was not ready. The orcs fell upon the land with fury and fire. They fought without fear, without rest, and without mercy. They destroyed for the sake of it, tearing down homes not to claim them, but to erase them. The dark portal had opened, and with it the age of peace had ended. The orcs had crossed. The dark portal had opened, and Azeroth was no longer a world alone. What began as scattered reports, missing scouts, burned fields, soon became a tide of fear. Villagers spoke of green-skinned monsters taller than men, with tusks and glowing eyes. Entire patrols vanished in the woods. Farms were left in ash. Even the bravest knights began to glance over their shoulders when the wind carried strange smells from the trees. Anduin Lothar rode hard across the kingdom, rallying troops, reinforcing outposts, chasing shadows. But the enemy never struck twice in the same place. The orcs moved with unfamiliar tactics, more brutal than bandits, more organized than beasts. They struck where defenses were weakest, and then vanished like ghosts. The humans of Stormwind had no word for what they faced. The orcs had many: Horde, clan, war chief. They marched beneath blood banners, bound together by dark oaths. They were not raiding to survive. They were warring to conquer. At their head stood Black Hand the Destroyer, brutal and unchallenged, his rule enforced by Gul'dan and his warlocks. Yet even then, beneath Black Hand's iron command, others began to stir. Among them, a thoughtful warrior named Orgrim Doomhammer, who saw in Gul'dan something to be feared. But for now, all voices followed the drums of war. The first war had no declaration, no ceremony, no duel between kings. It began with fire. The orcs swept down from the black morass, spreading outward like a flood of steel. They took Grand Hamlet and Sunnyglade. They crushed the defenders at Eastvale and pressed toward Redridge. Every loss left a scar on the land, and a silence in the hearts of its people. The kingdom's defences faltered. These were not wars they had trained for. The orcs were stronger, faster, unyielding. Human tactics, formations, discipline, code, meant little against warriors who knew no fear and showed no mercy. Still, Stormwind fought. Lothar led with relentless resolve, rallying survivors, reorganizing his troops. Behind the walls of Stormwind Keep, King Lane tried to keep hope alive. He was no fool. He knew the cost of war. But he also believed in his people. He believed that the light would guide them, even in the darkest hour. And in the shadows, Medivh watched. Alone in Karazhan, haunted by voices not his own, the Guardian teetered on the edge of madness. Friends who visited him spoke of confusion, of outbursts, of memory slipping like sand through his fingers. He had opened the portal, but now it twisted inside him like a wound. The man and the monster within him warred for control. And then came Garona, half-orc, half-human, raised in the shadows of the Horde and shaped by Gul'dan's manipulations. Garona walked between worlds. She was a spy, an emissary, a weapon, and yet she was also lost. In Azeroth she found kindness, in King Lane she found respect, and in Medivh she found something stranger still. Pity, perhaps, or fear. She warned them. The Horde would not stop. There was no treaty to sign, no surrender to offer, only war. Still, Lane hesitated. He wanted peace, wanted to believe that the orcs could be reasoned with. But Lothar knew better, and deep down, so did Garona. The first war would not be won with words. It would be won or lost by fire and steel. And as Stormwind braced for siege, far beneath the world, the shadows stirred. The portal had not just brought orcs to Azeroth, it had let something else in. The war raged on. Town by town, forest by forest, the Horde advanced. What they could not burn, they broke. And what they could not break, they buried. But it was not only swords and fire that threatened Stormwind. There were darker forces moving in silence, within the very heart of the kingdom. Medivh had grown quiet, too quiet. Anduin Lothar, once his closest friend, had seen the change, first subtle, then undeniable. The Guardian, meant to stand between Azeroth and the darkness beyond the stars, had become a stranger. Riddles instead of answers, rage instead of reason. Doors that once opened with welcome, now grown shut with secrets. But the truth of Medivh's fall lay deeper than madness. It was possession, The spirit of Sargeras, fallen titan and lord of the Burning Legion, had taken root in him since birth, a legacy passed from his mother, Aegwyn, who once dared defy the Legion and sealed her fate in doing so. For years, Sargeras slumbered within Medivh until the time came to act, to open the portal, to begin the invasion. And now, with war consuming the land, the demon inside stirred restlessly. It was time to finish what had begun. Medivh had become a danger, not only to Stormwind, but to the world. And so Lothar made a terrible decision. He rode to Karazhan with Khadgar, Medivh's young apprentice, whose suspicions had grown into certainty, and with them went Garona, torn between loyalty and survival, hunted by both sides of the war. Together they ascended the twisted tower, through corridors haunted by ghosts of time, by memories that had never lived. What they found was not a man, not entirely. Medivh had become a vessel, his soul drowning beneath the will of Sargeras. His words flickered between madness and clarity. His eyes burned with unnatural light. When they challenged him, he laughed, and when they attacked, the tower itself seemed to fight back. Karazhan bent and screamed. Time fractured, illusions danced on the walls, memories from the past and echoes of the future clashed in the halls. In the chaos, it was Khadgar who struck the final blow, a blade through the heart, a spell to sever the corruption.
Medivh died, and as he did, the spirit of Sargeras howled and fled. But the damage had been done. The portal still stood, the Horde still marched, and the kingdom would not survive what came next. In the days that followed, Garona returned to the court of Stormwind. She stood beside King Lane, offering knowledge of the orcs of Gul'dan, of their strategies and weaknesses. He trusted her. He respected her. In some ways, he was the only one who ever did. And that is why she killed him. What passed between them in that final moment is lost to history. Some say he saw the dagger coming and did not raise a hand to stop it. Others claim he forgave her, even as she struck, and some believe it was not her hand at all, but Gul'dan's spell that forced it. Whatever the truth, Garona disappeared, and King Lane's blood stained the stones of his own throne room. With their king dead, and the last defences shattered, Stormwind fell. The Horde poured through the gates, looting, burning, razing everything in their path. Families fled into the night. Sacred halls were reduced to rubble. The great city was consumed in fire and shadow. But not all hope was lost. Lothar, battered but unbroken, led a final retreat. With Khadgar at his side, and what few soldiers remained loyal, they escaped across the sea, to a distant land, where other human kingdoms still stood, to Lordaeron. The war was not over, it had only just begun.